Imagine walking down, like, a pristine, sun-drenched street in the Hollywood
Oh,
Hills.
yeah. The kind with the manicured hedges and everything.
Exactly, just multi-million-dollar architecture everywhere you look. Everything is perfectly curated. But then as you're walking, you spot something that just completely shatters that perfection.
Right. Something that totally doesn't belong.
Yeah, a luxury electric car. A Tesla, just abandoned on Bluebird Avenue. It's covered in this thick layer of caked-on dirt sitting right out in the open.
Which is wild because in a neighborhood like that, every vehicle is immaculately detailed. They're all tucked away behind these massive security gates.
Right, so it's a glaring anomaly, a visual disruption that just sat there for weeks, gathering dust in the late summer heat of 2025.
And it's what investigators eventually found, locked inside that abandoned car that turns this from, like, a strange neighborhood nuisance into a sprawling, chilling tragedy.
It really does. So today we are taking a deep dive into a massive stack of sources for you. We've got investigative reports, grand jury leaks, forensic analyses, and digital footprints.
It's a massive amount of material to get through.
It really is.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to unpack all of this and piece together the complex case of a 14-year-old girl named Celeste Rivas Hernandez and the 20-year-old pop star David Anthony Burke.
Who is, of course, known globally to millions of fans as D4V.
Exactly. But before we really dive into the evidence laid out in these sources, we need to establish the legal reality of where this stands right now.
Yes, that is absolutely essential. So just to be clear for everyone listening, David Burke is officially the target of a grand jury investigation. But he has not been arrested or charged with a crime.
Right.
Under the law, he's presumed innocent. Our purpose in this deep dive is not to pass a verdict at all. We are strictly here to synthesize and report the facts, the timelines, and the forensic realities exactly as they exist in the source material we have.
Perfectly said. Okay, let's unpack this. We start at the inciting incident, and it doesn't happen with some dramatic Hollywood police raid.
No, it starts with something so mundane, a parking violation.
Yeah. On September 5, 2025, that dusty Tesla was finally towed from Bluebird Avenue because it violated a standard 72-hour parking ordinance.
Right, they just hauled it off to an impound lot on North Mansfield Avenue.
And it sat there for 3 days until September 8th, when employees at the tow yard noticed this overwhelming, just foul odor emanating from the vehicle.
So naturally, they called the LAPD.
Right. And when officers arrived, they opened the frunk.
And for anyone who doesn't drive an EV, the frunk is the front trunk space.
Right, because electric vehicles don't have a massive gas engine under the hood. There's just a storage compartment right up front.
Exactly. And inside that unventilated compartment, police found plastic cadaver bags.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Unsealed documents later revealed the devastating specifics of what was inside those bags. It was the dismembered, heavily decomposed remains of Celeste Rivas Hernandez.
It's just horrific.
It is. Her head and torso were sealed in one bag, and her severed limbs were in another. And the heartbreaking part is this discovery occurred just one day after what would have been her 15th birthday.
I mean, it's incredibly dark. And almost immediately, the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office hits a massive scientific wall.
Right, because when human remains are found, the very first priority is establishing a timeline.
Exactly, figuring out exactly when the person died. But they couldn't do that here because the forensic evidence showed the body had been subjected to what they call a freeze-thaw cycle.
Which is such a bizarre scientific complication.
It really is. The physical evidence strongly indicates the remains were cryopreserved, like they were frozen for a significant period of time.
Which basically presses pause on the natural decomposition process, right?
Exactly. But eventually, those remains were removed from whatever freezer they were stored in, placed into those plastic bags, and locked inside that black Tesla's front trunk.
During the absolute peak of the Los Angeles summer heat.
Yes. Which completely destroys the biological evidence. It's like, okay, think about when you leave a full glass bottle of water in the freezer.
Oh, right. The ice expands.
Exactly. The water inside the cells expands into microscopic ice crystals. It shatters from the inside out. The cellular walls just rupture.
Wow.
And then, when you introduce the sweltering heat of a black car baking in the California sun, the tissue doesn't just thaw naturally. It rapidly breaks down in this highly accelerated, totally unnatural way.
So that freeze-thaw cycle essentially erases the medical examiner's ability to pinpoint the exact cause of death,
Yeah.
or even the specific day it happened.
Right. And from a criminal profiling perspective, what's fascinating here is that this forensic destruction tells a very specific story of intent.
It definitely does, because postmortem dismemberment and cryopreservation, I mean, those are incredibly labor-intensive processes.
Right. You don't just do that on a whim.
No, absolutely not. They do not point to a spontaneous crime of passion or some sudden panicked accident. You need space, you need tools, and a sustained effort over time.
So it points to calculated concealment. Whoever did this needed to buy time. Which brings us to the biggest question. Why go through the immense trouble of freezing and dismembering a body rather than just hiding it?
And who are they trying to hide so desperately?
Exactly. To understand why she was hidden so elaborately, you have to look at how society viewed Celeste while she was missing.
Right. Her background is crucial here.
Yeah, so she was a 14-year-old girl from Lake Elsinore, California, which is roughly 60 miles outside of LA. She was born to parents who immigrated from El Salvador.
And according to the records, she was actually reported missing 3 separate times in her final year.
Right. The last official missing person report was filed on April 5, 2024. She was only 13 years old at the time.
And that timeline reveals a really critical systemic blind spot in how law enforcement handles missing children.
How so?
Well, because Celeste had a documented history of leaving her home, she was categorized under what the legal system calls a status offense. She was labeled a habitual runaway.
Meaning she wasn't treated like a child who had been abducted?
Precisely. When a teenager is classified as a habitual runaway, the law enforcement response is structurally deprioritized.
So no Amber Alerts.
No Amber Alerts pinging on everyone's cell phones. No massive search grids or helicopters. The underlying assumption built into the system is that the child left voluntarily, and therefore will likely return voluntarily.
The urgency simply isn't there.
Exactly.
But here's the twist. The digital trail proves that narrative completely wrong. Celeste didn't just run away and come back. She became a digital phantom.
Right, because the police officially considered her missing starting in April 2024.
But surveillance footage captured her visiting her family home in September 2024. And digital records and photographs definitively prove she was alive and active as late as January 2, 2025.
Which completely upends the initial investigative timeline. It means she was living off the grid, totally undetected by authorities for roughly 9 months.
Okay, wait, let me push back on this just a bit. So, what does this all mean for you as the listener? I mean, isn't it highly possible she was just couch surfing with other teenagers? Or living in encampments on the streets? Kids run away and disappear into the margins of Los Angeles all the time.
That's a fair question, but
Why do investigators immediately jump to the conclusion of this powerful control dynamic? Like, how does a child just vanish into a completely different orbit right under everyone's noses for 9 months?
it comes down to the brutal financial and logistical reality of surviving in Southern California.
Okay.
A 14-year-old with no legal ID, no credit card, and no legal ability to sign a lease or secure a job cannot simply vanish into thin air for 9 months while maintaining a steady digital presence.
Ah, right. You need money for a phone plan.
Exactly. To survive completely off the radar for that long requires consistent financial support, private shelter, and transportation logistics.
Yep.
You do not get that from couch surfing with other 14-year-olds.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that period of hidden existence strongly indicates she was enveloped by someone with significant resources, an older figure who could provide the infrastructure needed to keep her hidden.
And that infrastructure brings us directly to the very public figure she was hiding with, David Burke.
Right. D4 Viety.
Yeah, he's a massive star in the alt-pop world. Millions of streams, known for these deeply moody, atmospheric tracks. But the source material shows their connection didn't start at, like, a backstage meet and greet.
No, not at all.
They met online, in the spaces where teenagers practically live today. Shockingly, Celeste was a highly active member of D4VD's official Discord server as early as 2022.
And the math on that timeline is deeply disturbing.
Whoa.
In 2022, Celeste would have been 12, maybe just turning 13 years old.
And David Burke would have been 18, a legal adult.
Right. And she wasn't just some casual fan chatting about his music.
No. Other users in that very Discord server openly referred to her as his girlfriend.
Which is just wild to think about happening out in the open.
It is. And they even shared matching tattoos. Both of them had shh inked on their index fingers.
Wow.
And as you dig into the chat logs during the summer of 2024, which, remember, is when Celeste was officially classified as a missing person, D4VD posted in the server complaining about being in a song crisis,
Right.
and an anonymous user replied directly to him saying, "Drop the one with the missing girl, Celeste Rivas Hernandez."
And D4VD never replied to that message. It just sat there in the digital ether.
Unbelievable.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, imagine you were scrolling through a celebrity Discord. To the average user, it's just a fan chat room. But to a predator, it is an unfiltered hunting ground.
Absolutely.
This case highlights how the modern digital landscape allows powerful adults to completely bypass traditional boundaries. 10 years ago, a star's interaction with fans was mediated by publicists, security guards, and physical distance.
Right, you couldn't just message them directly.
Exactly. But today, a private server provides a direct, unmonitored line into a vulnerable child's bedroom. It raises massive questions about online grooming.
And the blur between his digital persona, his art, and real-life violence gets even darker. D4BD's music already deals heavily with themes of death. I mean, his breakout song is literally called Romantic Homicide.
Right.
But there is a specific unreleased track that leaked online in December 2023 and then resurfaced again after her body was discovered in 2025.
The file is titled Celeste Demo Unfan.
Yes. And the lyrics are incredibly stark. He sings, "Oh, Celeste, the girl with my name tattooed on her chest." And later in the track, "I want to make you be suicidal."
And while song lyrics are obviously not legal convictions, and artists frequently explore dark, fictional themes, investigators look at the convergence of timelines.
Right, the overlap.
Yeah. When the fictional violence in the art begins to mirror the physical reality of a missing child, it ceases to be just an aesthetic choice. It becomes a roadmap.
And that roadmap eventually leads from the digital world to a physical location. Because investigators had to figure out, where was this all happening?
Right. Where was she physically hiding?
And the trail led them to Doheny Place. This is a sprawling $20,000 a month mansion tucked away in the Hollywood Hills.
But notably, the lease for this luxury property was not in David Burke's name. It was leased by his manager, Josh Marshall.
Right. And after the Tesla was discovered, the LAPD executed a forced entry search warrant on the home. But simultaneously, the actual owner of the property hired a private investigator named Steve Fisher to assess what had been happening in his house.
And Fisher's discoveries were totally bizarre for a Hollywood Hills rental.
Incredibly out of place, he found an unopened 55-pound burn cage incinerator.
Wow.
Yeah, this is heavy-duty agricultural equipment, the kind used on rural farms capable of reaching 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. That is hot enough to cremate human bone.
That's terrifying.
And alongside it, he found an unused chainsaw. Records show both items were delivered to the mansion under a false name.
The crucial detail there is that the equipment was unused. When forensic profilers look at a scene like this, the presence of these specific tools indicates a massive contingency plan that was suddenly aborted.
A pivot.
Exactly. The original intention was almost certainly the total thermal destruction of the remains to completely erase the evidence.
So why abandon the plan? Why buy a 1,600-degree incinerator and a chainsaw, only to leave them in the box and put the body in a car instead?
Because of the logistical reality of the environment. A 55-pound burn cage might work on a 100-acre farm in the middle of nowhere. But Doheny Place is in the densely packed Hollywood Hills.
Right, you've got neighbors right next door.
Exactly. If you attempt to burn human remains at 1,600 degrees in a residential neighborhood, it produces massive, inescapable plumes of thick smoke and a highly distinct, horrific odor.
The neighbors would call the fire department within minutes.
Yes. So whoever planned this likely realized in a moment of panic that the sheer physics of the location made cremation impossible. The original plan failed logistically, forcing a desperate pivot to using the Tesla as a mobile, temporary tomb.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The tracking of that Tesla reveals an entirely separate layer of calculated behavior. Investigators discovered that there wasn't just one car.
Like there were two.
A second Tesla, identical in make, was leased on February 1st, 2025, and parked in the garage of that rental home.
This is a classic example of compartmentalization. The original Tesla, the one holding the evidence, was retired from use. It was driven out to Bluebird Avenue and abandoned to gather dirt.
Well, D4VD just kept living his life.
Precisely. He continued navigating his daily life, going to the studio and hanging out with friends in a fresh, identical car. It physically separates the crime scene from daily life, even while sitting just blocks away.
And the digital forensics on these vehicles is what breaks the timeline wide open. The LAPD Robbery Homicide Division pulled the GPS tracking data from the cars.
What'd they find?
That data places D4VD, along with a second unidentified individual, in a highly remote area of Santa Barbara County in the middle of the night during the spring of 2025.
Wow.
Yeah. And tragically, this aligns exactly with the window of time when prosecutors and the medical examiner estimate Celeste was killed.
But here is the logistical reality of buying heavy-duty incinerators, leasing decoy Teslas, and renting $20,000 mansions under managers' names.
Right, it's a lot of moving parts.
It is. A 20-year-old pop star simply does not execute a cover-up of this magnitude alone. The sheer scale of this operation requires a network. A pop star doesn't lease cars and abandon them in a vacuum.
No.
A celebrity at this level is not just a person. They are an enterprise. They are surrounded by an entire ecosystem of managers, content creators, security personnel, and fixers.
And that ecosystem is precisely what the Los Angeles grand jury is currently tearing into. Prosecutors are aggressively subpoenaing this inner circle to break the wall of silence.
Let's talk about the manager's testimony.
Yeah, Robert Morgenroth, he is the head of Mogul Vision, which is D4V's record label, and he essentially functions as his manager. He was forced to testify before the grand jury for 3 straight days.
That's a long time to be grilled under oath.
It is. And reporters inside the courthouse actually overheard Morgenroth talking with his attorney in the hallway. He was complaining about how prosecutors pushed him on why he didn't call the police the moment he realized what was happening in that house.
What was his response?
His alleged response was that he didn't feel it was his responsibility and that he just wanted to continue with the tour.
Oh my God. That statement, if accurate, exposes the terrifying underbelly of the entertainment industry. The entire ecosystem relies entirely on the star's revenue.
Exactly. I mean, the tour is the product.
Yeah.
And the machine is built to protect the product at absolutely all costs, running completely on autopilot. Even when confronted with the horrific reality that a 14-year-old girl is dead, the instinct of the corporate machine is simply to keep the tour dates moving. What does that say about the music industry's priorities?
It's sickening. But a grand jury has tools designed specifically to fracture that kind of corporate loyalty. And we are seeing the pressure work in real time on the younger members of the entourage.
Oh, totally. Look at Neil Langston.
Right.
He's a content creator and a close friend of David Burke. Langston attempted to dodge his grand jury subpoena by fleeing the state. The LAPD responded by sending 7 officers to arrest him at his mother's house in Montana.
7 officers.
Yeah, physically dragging him back to Los Angeles to face the jury.
But the contrast in how the entourage handles the pressure is wild. The manager, Morgenroth, testifies for 3 days to protect the business. Langston, the friend, folds almost immediately.
He only testified for about 40 minutes.
Right. And right after he got out of the jury room, he posted this highly defensive rant to his Instagram close friends list.
Yeah.
He called D4D a, quote, dickhead, assured everyone he was legally in the clear, and claimed he had receipts to prove his innocence.
But the crazy part is, in paragraphs of complaining about how stressful this ordeal was for him personally, he never once mentioned Celeste Rivas Hernandez.
Not once. When statement analysis experts review behavior like that, they see a textbook example of self-preservation. The corporate loyalty dissolves. The second personal freedom is threatened.
And the legal system isn't letting up. Another female witness from that inner circle actually went into hiding to avoid testifying. She's currently facing a body attachment arrest warrant.
To clarify for anyone unfamiliar with that term, a body attachment warrant isn't a criminal charge for committing a crime.
Right.
It is a civil order issued by a judge that literally allows law enforcement to physically grab a witness, attach them to a deputy, and force them to appear in court to answer questions.
They will literally drag you in.
Exactly. The authorities are systematically dismantling the wall of silence. However, the investigation isn't just fighting friction from the music industry. It is also fighting massive institutional friction from within the legal system itself.
Which brings us to the most frustrating roadblock in this entire case. The LAPD went to a judge and successfully secured an unprecedented security hold on the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's autopsy report.
Right.
Because of this hold, the actual cause of death, the toxicology reports, and all the physical findings of the autopsy are completely sealed from the public. They're even sealed from Celeste's grieving family.
This raises an important question. Why would the LAPD do this?
Right.
The mechanism behind a security hold is rooted in investigative strategy. The LAPD's argument is that by keeping the forensic facts completely secret, they prevent potential suspects and uncooperative witnesses from tailoring their grand jury testimony to fit the physical evidence.
Okay, so if a witness doesn't know how the victim died, they can't invent a lie that perfectly matches the autopsy.
Exactly.
But the chief medical examiner, Dr. Ode Ukapo, actually took the highly unusual step of publicly criticizing the LAPD over this.
Which you rarely see.
Yeah. He pointed out that these kinds of indefinite security holds are virtually unheard of in other major jurisdictions. He argued that sealing the autopsy rarely improves the actual legal outcome of a case, but it severely damages the institution's transparency and trust with the community.
Especially when a child's family is left completely in the dark.
Absolutely.
It's a massive institutional clash between the desire to tightly control an investigation and the moral obligation of public transparency. But despite the LAPD's extreme efforts to keep everything sealed in California, a massive leak happened anyway, hundreds of miles away in Texas.
Right. David Burke's family was in a Texas courtroom fighting against the grand jury subpoenas. And during those proceedings, legal documents accidentally became public.
Oops.
Yeah. Those documents officially designated David Anthony Burke as the formal target of the Los Angeles grand jury for one count of murder.
And we really need to define that terminology. In a grand jury investigation, you can be a subject, which simply means the jury is looking into your conduct.
Just feeling things out.
Right. But being officially designated as a target means prosecutors believe they already have substantial evidence linking you directly to the commission of the crime, and they are actively seeking an indictment against you.
Wow. The scope of this deep dive is immense. We've traced a path from a dirt-caked car on a sunny Hollywood street down into the unregulated digital underworld of Discord servers where predators have direct access to children.
Yes.
We've looked at the terrifying logistics of buying burn cages under fake names, the systemic failures that label missing children as mere runaways, and the sprawling corporate machinery that will protect a pop star's tour over a human life. It is a stark mirror showing exactly how exposed the vulnerable are in the digital age.
It really is. And as we conclude, I want to leave you with one final unexplored thread to mull over. A potential path forward that completely bypasses the LAPD's wall of secrecy.
Okay, what is it?
Because the criminal autopsy is sealed, Celeste's family is actively considering filing a civil lawsuit to force the release of those records and depose the inner circle under oath.
Oh.
Yeah. Here is the undeniable legal reality of this case. Regardless of whether the medical examiner eventually determines Celeste's actual death was a calculated murder or a tragic accident, like a drug overdose, the active, premeditated concealment of a body is a massive felony entirely on its own.
Right. I mean, you can't just put a human being in a trunk, regardless of how they died.
Precisely. The act of dismemberment, the freezing, the relocation to the Tesla, those are concrete crimes independent of the cause of death. So the provocative question for you to consider is, if the criminal justice system stays deadlocked behind closed doors and security holds, could a civil lawsuit from a relentless, grieving family be the only mechanism powerful enough to finally drag this multi-million-dollar music empire into the light and force them to tell the truth?
Man, that is a heavy question to sit with, and it brings us right back to the beginning. That abandoned Tesla on Bluebird Avenue wasn't just a car parked in the wrong place. It was a modern tomb, engineered by wealth, insulated by a corporate wall of silence, and left sitting right out in the open sun. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep questioning the information around you, and we'll see you next time.